Chapter 10. The Philosopher and the Scythian Queen. I left directions with Theron and threw him to the priestesses to administer ever-decreasing doses of the laudanum orally. After the first day, it was no longer necessary to continue the camphor and almond mixture. After the first night, the seizures stopped, and the queen's muscles relaxed, and the spasms quickly diminished. I gave strict instructions that she should eat or drink nothing except what I provided for her. I sent my housekeeper Melissa with a steady stream of nourishment in the form of broth and high-energy foods infused with copious amounts of honey. I insisted that she never be left alone, and her brothers stood guard day and night. The queen quickly regained her strength. On the third day, I went to see her again. I was ushered into her presence. There she sat, resplendent in her red silk gowns, in an exotic fan-backed chair. 6 of her priestesses, attendants, stood 3 to a side. 2 of them waved fans of ostrich feathers, moving the air. On my entrance into her chambers, she stood and waved off her attendants, who immediately obeyed, bowed, and melted away into the corners of the room. She had fully recovered from her ordeal. In fact, she looked very impressive indeed. Her movements were like a dancer's or a gymnast, with ballerina-like grace and a combination of power and purpose in her steps. Her red hair was braided, and the long braid lay on her shoulder and cascaded like a fiery rope down her right arm, almost reaching her hip. She glided up to me and stopped uncomfortably close, her face level with my own. She was tall and lithe and incredibly athletic. She gazed at me with deep, dark, liquid, almond-shaped eyes, which always moved, noting every detail on my face. She circled round me very close. I could feel the gaze of those liquid eyes on my back, sizing me up, looking up and down. I had the uncomfortable feeling that I was being inspected, as a feline would examine her prey. She came back around to face me full on. Without saying a word, she stepped back 3 paces. She bowed her head to me, but only slightly, and motioned me towards the great chair. "Come, sit," she commanded. Immediately her attendants were around us. A comfortable chair was produced, lower than her chair, of course, and then a table with 2 steaming cups of some liquid appeared. I waited until she sat, and then so did I, hands on my knees, facing her across the low table. "Do you speak our tongue?" she said in the strange language I had heard her brothers speak. "I do understand it well enough," I replied. "How is it, physician, that you have come to know the language of the steppes?" "Someone I know gave me the gift of tongues," I replied honestly enough. "Forgive me, my queen, for my ignorance," I continued, "for I am only a humble physician. How shall I address you? For I do not wish to offend out of ignorance. You may call me, as the Greeks do, Vasilisa. Thank you, my Vasilisa, I said, bowing low. I am overjoyed that you have come back from the edge of death. She gestured to the steaming cups of white liquid in front of me on the table. Come, drink. Let me give you the hospitality of my house, though I am far from home. I held the cup between my hands and took a drink. The piping hot liquid was not unpleasant. With a sweet, slightly nutty flavor, it reminded me of almond milk. This is mare's milk, said the Vasilisa. It reminds us of our bonds with the earth, and our herds and our horses. It makes us one with them, for we nurture each other over time. She put down her cup and looked at me intently. How is it, physician, that you sent light through the long tunnel of darkness and drew me to you through many curtains of fire and ice? What means this? Who are you that bring me back from the lands of the dead? For that is where I was falling to, she said with those liquid eyes searching deep within my soul. Are you a wizard? A shaman? I am no wizard, my Vasilisa, only an ordinary man. These must seem like mysterious happenings to you. If you were indeed headed to the land of the dead, it was someone in this land of the living who tried to send you there. I saw my father, the king, there, she said quietly. He told me to seek you, the physician. He told me that I must avenge him, and you would show me the way. And then there was light, and I climbed up towards it. I heard the throat songs of my priestess sisters. I was in the grip of an iron fist. I could not move. I could not breathe. And then it all shattered like ice on a frozen pond. And you were there, looking at me. You have been through an ordeal, my Vasilisa. Many do not come back from that abyss. But you are here now, and safe, I said. How do you say I was sent to the land of the shadows? She asked. It was no magic, my Vasilisa. You were poisoned, I think, said I. Can you think back to the day of your sickness? Did anyone give you food or drink? Her eyebrows furrowed in concentration. Yes, there was this Spartan, Eurycles by name, who is known as a friend of Herod, king of Judea. He came to see us at our stables last week. He introduced himself. I did not like this man. He was fawning all over us, sickly sweet. But he said he was to be a patron of this coming circus for the Red faction, so we tolerated him. He wanted to meet my brothers and I before he invested a large amount of silver in a wager. Theron was present. We spoke for some time. He had his servant pour us some wine for a toast to seal the deal. He passed the cup to me, and I drank it. So, you drank from the cup of this stranger? No, this is not an unusual thing for us, physician. We are often entertaining our backers. It is part of this game we must play. As for this Spartan, Theron said the Romans had made him like a king of Sparta, just as Herod is the king of Judea. So we played our part, but I did not like the man. He stared at me as if he would possess me. But I humored him, and I drank the wine he offered. Did he drink the wine as well from his cup? I said. Yes, with a great leering smile. The queen put down her cup, stood up, and glided in her graceful way to me again. She looked down at me intently, and then she walked slowly, purposely circling around me, never taking her eyes off me. I stood and I returned her gaze. It was hypnotic. I was transfixed by the strangeness of her graceful but wild and athletic movements. 3 times she circled me before she came to rest in front of me, very close. Those dark liquid almond eyes were devouring me. I thought I was looking into the soul of a predator, and I was the prey. Who are you, physician? I saw you through the darkness. I was called to you through curtains of fire and ice. You are no mere physician. You were sent here by the gods to save me. You and I are bound together, she whispered in my ear. There was power behind her words. This was no idle remark. I was tingling, vibrating like a plucked guitar string. Forgive me, my Vasilisa. I bowed and stepped back to break the spell. But I must go now. I have much to do. I must see Theron. The next day, I was dining with Sophia at her apartments. Abu was busy entertaining Camilla with Atlas and Calliope, whom he had taught many clever tricks. Camilla's laughter at the antics of those 2 little thieves echoed throughout the home. Sophia and I retired to her balcony, overlooking the great harbor and the flickering red light of the great lighthouse Pharos across the waters. I told Sophia about the previous day's events and swore her to secrecy. I believe that the Queen may still be in danger. Until we sort this out, I think it is best to keep this between ourselves, I said. What is she like? She asked, interested. I have not known many queens, my lady, but from where I come from, they are elderly and dignified, like one's grandmother, and gracious. Axia is not like that at all. She projects power and has a commanding presence, but in a wild way, like a tiger stalking. Tiger? I have never seen such a creature, Adam. But they say there are many in India and on the steppes. She is graceful in her movements, but they are very deliberate in a sort of cat-like way. I had a distinct impression that she was sizing me up for some purpose. I was being observed and measured. We reversed roles. Being in her presence, you had the impression of being with an exotic creature, all movement like the wind, but with controlled, pent-up energy. I had the uncomfortable feeling that she would spring upon me at any moment. She put me off my guard. Does she remember anything that happened to her? Asked Sophia. No, but she does recall being offered a cup of wine from a Spartan by the name of Eurycles. Eurycles? Do you mean Gaius Julius Eurycles of Sparta, here in Alexandria? My colleague, Nicholas of Damascus, has corresponded with me about this very fellow and the unholy influence he has upon Herod, king of Judea. Nicholas is that king's historian and counselor. Yes, he's here, and he has something to do with what happened, I think. Well, we must convene a meeting to discuss this with the leadership of the museum to see what can be done, said Sophia. Tell me about these Scythians, my lady, I said, for I have not heard of them before in my land. Sophia looked at me coyly. You are still being so mysterious about who you are and where you came from. Can you not trust me with your confidences? I drew closer and placed her hands between mine. I looked deeply into those ice-blue eyes, and I said, "My lady, I trust you with my life. I would do anything you ask, but I cannot tell. Do not press me about this. It is for your own protection that I do not reveal where I come from. You must trust me on this. But tell me now of the Scythians." Sophia motioned me to sit down. Since coming to this time and place, I was frequently impressed by the ability of people here to remember and recite information from rote. Sophia's memory in this regard was astonishing. She paused a few minutes and looked up and to the right and began to recite the following account, all from her own memory. They are a mysterious and exotic people, Adam. In truth, we know very little, except what Herodotus wrote more than 300 years ago, and what has passed to us through legend and myth. Homer tells us in the Iliad of a race of Amazons, woman warriors from the east, who fought in the great Trojan Wars. Legend has it that this race of women warriors are fierce horse masters and skilled with the bow. Legend has it that their right breasts are removed so that it will not interfere with the aim of the bow and arrow. But I think that part is an exaggeration. Herodotus tells us this: to meet them we must take a ship through the Mare Nostrum to the Bosporus, and then into the Euxine Sea. At the far eastern end of that sea, one must debark and travel many days by horse to come to the shores of the Caspian Sea. Across that sea, after many days' ride from its eastern shore, there is another small or salty sea, into which great rivers flow, known as the Aral Sea. Now between these two seas, the greatest of the Scythian tribes, the Massagetae, live, for they had inhabited those lands from time immemorial. They speak a language similar in sound, but different from that of the Parthians. Herodotus tells us that they are nomads, tending large flocks of cattle, sheep, and especially horses, for it is the horses that is the basis of their culture and their military strength. They have neither cities nor forts, and carry all their dwellings with them wherever they go on massive carts. All of them, men and women and children, have been trained from the earliest ages to shoot their arrows from horseback at full gallop. They do not cultivate crops or live in cities, but move like wind across the endless grassland seas of the steppes, stopping to have their flocks, herds, and horses graze on the abundant, sweet grasses that stretch innumerable leagues across the breadth of Asia to the very gates of the land of the Quin, the land of silk, the land of the Han Emperor. They have grown wealthy tending their horses, and with wool and meat, and trading with Greeks, the Romans, and the people of the land of the Quin. They accumulated much gold, silk, and other treasures, which they carry with them on their travels. The Massagetae are the greatest of the Scythian tribes. They are in constant warfare with other tribes and with more settled peoples to the south. They fight on horseback and on foot, using bows and lances, and their favorite weapon in close combat is the battle axe. They wear gilded armor. Their horses also wear scale armor. Their spear points, arrowheads, and battle axes are of bronze, as is their armor, and their horses' armor, as they have bronze and gold in abundance in their country. They have weapons of iron as well, particularly their great battle axes, which they acquire through trade. When their kings die, they dig a large grave, which is square in shape and of great size. When it's ready, they take the king's corpse, and having opened the belly and cleaned out the inside, they fill the cavity with chopped cypress, frankincense, parsley seed, and anise, which after they sew up the opening, enclose the body in wax and place it on a wagon, carrying it about through their different tribes. The body of the king is laid in a prepared grave, stretched upon a mattress. Spears are fixed in the ground on either side of the corpse, and beams of wood are stretched from above to form a roof, which is covered by thatch. In the open space around the body of the king, they bury his concubines, first killing them by strangling. They also kill his cup-bearer, his cook, his groom, his lackey, his messenger, and some of his best horses, sometimes dozens of them. They also bury him with the best possessions and some golden cups. Then they raise a vast mound around this grave. The larger the mound, the greater their departed king. These mounds look like hills and are called kurgans. Herodotus also tells us of one of the great warrior queens, Tamiris, who lived at the time of Cyrus the Great, the first king of kings of the Persians, about half a millennia ago. In those days, east of the Caspian Sea and eastward of the Caucasus, extending as far as the eye can see towards the rising of the sun, there stretched that boundless plain, and a great proportion of that plain is the domain of the Massagetans, whom Cyrus was eager to attack. Manifold and weighty were the factors which stirred him to do this, and goad him on. Chief was the seemingly supernatural powers of his birth, and secondly, the remarkable good fortune that had always been the complement of his campaigns. No nation that had found itself the object of Cyrus's ambitions had ever been able to devise a means of escaping him. Owing to the recent death of the king of the Massagetae, it was his widow, that woman named Tamiris, who sat on the throne. Cyrus came to make this queen his wife, so he sent her a celebration and a declaration of courtship. But Tamiris, who knew full well that it was her kingdom rather than herself that was being wooed, rejected his advances. Foiled in his underhanded approach, Cyrus threw himself into a naked assault upon the Massagetans and began to advance upon their lands. A great river barred the way. Bridges were built as a means of yoking together the two sides of the river, enabling his army to make the crossing, and on the various boats that were simultaneously being deployed to transport his troops, bristling towers were erected. But while these efforts were going on, Tamiris sent an ambassador with a message. "King of the Medes," ran her message, "stop working yourself up into a frenzy over an enterprise that is itself nothing but frenzy. After all, how can you possibly know whether its consequences will work out in your favor? I say put a stop to it, rule your own subjects, and learn to live with the sight of me ruling mine. But if peace is the last thing you want, so you are not bound to follow my advice, very well then. If you are really so desperate to pit your strength against that of the Massagetans, then give up on your exhausting project of bridging the river, and we will withdraw 3 days' march from the river, so that you can then make the crossing into our territory. Alternatively, if you would rather receive us in your own lands, then you withdraw the same distance." Cyrus listened to this proposal and then convened a meeting of his advisors. He accepted the proposal to cross the river unimpeded. Then he moved his army forward into the lands of the Massagetans. Cyrus formed a plan. He marched onwards from the great river a day's journey. Then he merged all his units back to the river, but left behind him the non-combatants of the Persian army, a rump that was promptly attacked by 1/3 of the Massagetan forces, who were annihilated. In the wake of this victory, the Massagetans observed a feast that had been prepared in the Persian camp. They stretched themselves out and gorged on the food and wine and fell asleep. Now it was Cyrus's turn to launch an ambush. They attacked the sleeping Massagetans and slaughtered them, but some were taken alive, including the son of the queen Tamiris, Spargapses, who had been in command. Hearing the news of what had happened to her army and her son, Tamiris dispatched a herald to Cyrus. "Blood drinker," her message said, "never sated, proud are you, Cyrus, of your day's work? Well, you should not be. The fruit of the vine, which bloats you Persians to the point of frenzy, so that the wine, even as it swills down your throats, slips past the abuse that is simultaneously arising in your guts. That was the poison you deployed in your underhanded way, scorning the honest test of battle to get the better of my son. Well now, I am going to offer you some good advice, which I strongly advise you to take. Give me back my son. Depart my country, and I am prepared to overlook the swaggering brutality with which you handed a whole third of the Massagetan army. Refuse, however, and I swear by the sun, the lord of the Massagetans, that ravening blood drinker though you may be, yet I will glut your taste for blood." Now, the son of Queen Tamiris woke up to the full horror of his circumstances, so he begged Cyrus to release him from his chains. His request was granted, but no sooner had he been freed and given back the use of his hands that he stabbed himself to death in disgrace. Tamiris assembled all the forces she could muster and met with Cyrus in battle. The resulting clash was the most terrible that has ever been fought between two rival barbarian peoples, and their tactics deployed are a matter not of opinion, but of record. First, it is said, the two sides rained arrows down upon one another from a distance. Then, when all their missiles were spent, they clashed and grappled together in close and desperate combat, stabbing with spears, fighting hand to hand with daggers. Time passed, but the combatants stood locked in battle, neither side willing to cede an inch. Finally, however, it was the Massagetans who gained the upper hand. The greater part of the Persian army was wiped out, and Cyrus himself was killed. He had been on the throne for 29 years. Tamiris, who had filled a wineskin with human blood, searched among the Persian dead for his corpse, and at once she found it. She cut off his head and pushed it into the wineskin. "No matter that I am the one left alive," she said, standing over the desecrated body. "No matter that I won the battle. When you tricked my son into your hands, you destroyed me. I threatened then that I would glut your thirst for blood. Now have your fill." Sophia finished her recitation and now looked at me with a twinkle in her eye. "So now you know all that I know of the Scythians, and the Massagetae in particular. But beware of that queen, for like Tamiris, she will be wrathful if crossed, I think. And of course, Adam, you simply must introduce her to me. I must see and speak to this force of nature." I took Sophia to meet the Scythian queen the next day. We were ushered into her chambers. The queen had by then recovered all her strength and vitality. As we entered, the 6 attendant priestesses rose in union, bowed deeply to the queen and then to us, and then silently streamed out of the chamber in procession, eyes down, silken white gowns flowing behind them like angel wings as they passed us. Axia was dressed in her full glory, gilded scale armor, silken trousers, knee-high deerskin boots, and a scarlet caftan with wide sleeves embroidered with golden stags and lions, a golden helmet with embossed figures of hunters and warriors struggling against fantastic beasts, was topped at the peak with a curved eagle's head with open mouth, screaming defiance. Her long red hair was braided, with the rope-like braids falling down her back in thick coils from under her helmet. Curved nose, high cheekbones, ruby lips, and dark almond-shaped eyes that shone with a terrible beauty confronted us. She motioned us to sit, and as we did so, she studied Sophia carefully, and out of the corner of my eye, I could see that Sophia was studying Axia, making mental notes. "My Vasilisa," I said in Greek, bowing to her, "let me introduce you to the great philosopher and mathematician, Lady Sophia of Alexandria." I turned to Sophia and said, "My lady, let me introduce you to Axia Panopeles, she who is worthy of armor, the great warrior queen of the Massagetae, victor of 1,000 races in the hippodromes of the East, and recently my patient." They bowed their heads to each other politely. An awkward silence descended upon us. My mind raced for a topic or common ground on which to start a conversation. But Sophia, ever the gracious and wise companion, saved me. "My honored Vasilisa," she began, "your people are renowned amongst us and celebrated in myth and legends. We have heard of your great ancestor, Queen Tamiris, who slew Cyrus the Great in battle." Axia, with a slight smile, responded, "My lady, I do not know what philosophy or mathematics are. My people and I know the way of the steppes, and move as the wind moves upon it, husbanding our flocks and our horses under the dome of the skies and the stars. We have no cities, no walls, no homes, and no fortresses. We depend upon the horse, the bow, the lance, and our battle axes to defend our patrimony, as the great Cyrus found to his doom. We know the wealth of the sky and the limitless plains that give us life. We have no time for writing or thinking or recording our thoughts. We have our storytellers and myths that are passed down through the ages, so we know who we are. But mathematics and writing and philosophy, what are these things to us? Will they feed our families? Will they improve our herds? Will they restore our kingdom? Will they raise warriors for my hordes? Axia leaned towards Sophia to make her point. But I may be mistaken. I am sorry, for I am not of this part of the world. Perhaps you could teach me. I would be honored to do so, my Vasilisa. We do come from different worlds. I come from the world of farms and fields, of trees and vineyards, of bricks and mortars and cities with walls, where there is an ordered hierarchy of men and women. Unlike you, we are not as free as the wind, but it is so. Nevertheless, we too have our hearths and our homes, as do your people. We defend our homelands, as do yours. We love our children and our husbands, as you do. These things are what unite peoples all over the earth, are they not? Clever woman, replied Axia, looking at me and then back to Sophia. Tell me, are you a mother or a wife? Most people would have been put on their back foot by such a direct question. Sophia remained unfazed. She replied patiently and respectfully, No, my Vasilisa, I am not. I have taken vows to forswear marriage and children. It is a sacrifice, so that I may pursue the mysteries of the universe and give my knowledge to humankind, as Prometheus gave fire to all humanity. So, you have neither hearth nor home yourself. True, my Vasilisa. Axia looked at me with an intensity that I found alarming. Then she looked back to Sophia. Do you have a bond with this man, this physician? She asked abruptly. Sophia, for the first time, hesitated. She looked at me, and to my astonishment, blushed. Bond? I do not know what you mean, my Vasilisa. But I could see that Axia was alive to Sophia's reaction to her question. I am not blind, my lady, and I clearly see that you have an attraction for this man, even though he is no warrior. She laughed as she looked back at me. It was now my turn to blush. I looked down at my hands and fiddled with my fingers, trying to avoid Axia's withering gaze. Axia continued, looking back to Sophia. Forgive me, my lady. It is not the way of my people to play silly word games. For I said we know who we are and what we want, and if we cannot get what we want, we take it. For our world is a hard place. You, Lady Sophia, speak of vows. You have forsworn men, so that you may pursue knowledge. I, too, have made a similar vow, but for a purpose perhaps not as lofty as yours. Axia stared into the distance, and her face hardened. I have sworn to the goddess Tabiti, the Flaming One, not to know men until I drink from the cup of vengeance, from the skull of he who slew my father, and throw his headless body to the wolves. Only then will I look to somebody worthy to father my children. This I have sworn, she hissed. Axia looked back to me and continued with carefully chosen words. But this man is bound to me, my lady, for I saw him in my dreams, through curtains of fire and ice. The goddess has ordained it. He is mine, even though he is no warrior. He is clever, and he has courage and skills my people have never seen. He would be useful to me. Axia looked back to Sophia. So, my lady, in my world, where women are warriors, we would fight to the death over this one, she said, gesturing towards me. There was another awkward silence. Even Sophia was at a loss for words. But the silence was broken by Axia, who now laughed and clapped her hands together and smiled at both of us. But, my lady, I jest. Even though what I said about my bond to this physician is true, I am not in my own world, but in yours, where things are, shall we say, far more civilized. Axia reached out and warmly grasped Sophia's hand. And I shall do what is proper in your world of cities and philosophers. We shall not quarrel over this man. We shall be friends and share him, she laughed. Excuse me, my Vasilisa, I said, but do I not have a say in all of this? Axia turned to me with a mischievous smile. No, you do not, she said with finality. The Archangel Chronicles by Raymond. Copyright 2022. All rights reserved. Music. Ed Records. Legends. Epic Sound. Mystic Mountain by John Bajork. Epic Sound. Time is Running Fast by Jan Bajork. Epic Sound. In the Distance by Teo Mito. Epic Sound, Hard Charger by Christian Anderson. Epic Sound, Forest Run by Bonnie Grace. Epic Sound, In the Horizon by Teo Mito. Zach Nelson, Myth. Epic Sound, Running Against Time by Mark Torch. Epic Sound, Keep Close to the Guide by Philip Ayers. Epic Sound, for Survival by Bonnie Grace. Epic Sound, Counterguard by Jan Sumner.